want to quit. You wanna make a living in the army of the savior. And you should start by remembering you gotta pay a fee, Bob later.
Hey yo, I'm finally back after taking a small break. Can't have been that long. Oh shh. Now have I been busy with a new video over that time? No. Some notable things I've been doing is making the worst farm Stardew Valley has ever seen, and wasting countless hours losing match after match in Counter-Strike. But I am back now with something hopefully entertaining. Please remember to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and consider supporting me on Patreon if you would like. And with that, I present to you why I think the PSP was ahead of its time. It is 2003, and much like today, Nintendo is the undisputed king of the handheld market. And as you would expect, Sony wanted a slice of the pie. So in May of that year, they announced the development of a new handheld at E3 called the PlayStation Portable.
To celebrate 10th anniversary, I have brought very special news that I would like to share with you today. There's going to be a new baby within the family. It's not a PlayStation 3. Okay. Sony Computer Entertainment will be launching new handheld entertainment platform. The name of this new platform is called PSP.
This wasn't actually their first stab at the handheld market, with them having released a small device called the Pocket Station, exclusively in Japan in 1999. It enjoyed brief success, but never made a mark due to its region exclusivity, though it was brought back in 2013 as an app for the PSP. But getting back to it, it wasn't until November of 2003 that the first concept images of the upcoming console were made. Interestingly, the original PSP concept didn't feature any analog stick, only a D-pad and face buttons. This was a fact that reviewers expressed concern about at the time. Sony clearly must have agreed, as by the time E3 2004 rolled around, the PSP was rocking an analog nub on the lower left-hand side. Can we also take a moment to appreciate how good the PSP looks, and how well it has aged compared to other tech of that time? I mean, look at those rounded corners, and piano black finish. Just love it, so much. But I will admit that it is quite the fingerprint magnet, and how scratched up the finish gets after years of use leads to most second-hand PSPs looking like they were put in a blender. But damn, does it look good when it is polished and shiny. Although, looks aren't everything, a console is only as good as its games. And luckily, the PSP did not disappoint, having some classics that still hold up today, such as Midnight Club 3 and God of War Ghost of Sparta, as well as over 2,000 others. With that said, I think it's time we look under the hood and see what is powering this slab of innovation. For 2004, the PSP was packing some serious punch, even if it seems quite antiquated these days. But even more impressive than that was the size they managed to pack it all into, with it being only 17 centimeters long, 7.4 centimeters wide, and 2.3 centimeters thick, nearly 1 centimeter thinner than the DS. Though compared to a current phone, such as the iPhone 16, it looks a bit like a brick. But I digress. The real question is, what did they pack in those dimensions? Well, let's start with the most prominent part, the 4.3-inch LED screen with a resolution of 480 by 272, supporting 24-bit true color. It was basically double the resolution of the DS, and the DS also only had an 18-bit color screen. If bits of color matter to you, the next arguably more impressive part being the Universal Media Disk Drive, or UMD drive for short. It was basically a miniaturized optical drive, but like most optical disc readers, it was a massive battery hog, forcing game devs to avoid using it excessively, or battery life would tank severely. But it was still an impressive feat. Let me remind you that doing this sort of thing in 2004 was nearly unheard of. It was also a bold choice considering its main competitor, the DS, used game cards exclusively. The PSP did feature a memory card slot, but unless your PSP was jailbroken, you could only use it for storage and games you bought from the PlayStation Store. No sideloading allowed. For some reason, instead of adding a conventional SD card slot, Sony just had to be Sony and use their own proprietary format, in the form of the Memory Stick Pro Duo. Luckily, you can buy adapters to microSD for incredibly cheap these days. Another random addition to the PSP was an infrared port, but it was only featured on the PSP 1000 and removed in future models. It also featured Wi-Fi, but only Wi-Fi version 1, which had a theoretical maximum speed of 11 megabits per second, though in practice it was more like 1 to 3 megabits per second.
I just spilled my whole coffee. I just spilled absolutely everything.
Much like the PS3, it also featured free online play, with the PlayStation Store, where you could buy games and store them on your memory card. Sadly, the store was shut down in 2021. But of course, the most important part of any console is the CPU, or CPUs in this case, with it rocking two MIPS32-based R4000 chips clocked at 333 MHz, although up until 2007 it was locked at 222 MHz. Alongside the CPU was the graphics chip, running at a blazingly fast 166 MHz. It also had a very modest 32 megabytes of main memory, later doubled to 64 megabytes. Next to that was 4 megabytes of DRAM, which was split between the GPU and media engine. Powering all of this was a singular 800 mAh battery. The battery size was later lowered to 1200 mAh with the release of the PSP 2000, in a quest to make the PSP thinner. Although it did still support the 1800 mAh battery, which would give you some extra playtime. After packing all that hardware in and adding some final touches, it was time for launch. In October of 2004, Sony announced that the PSP would be launched in Japan on the 11th of December at a price of 19,800 yen, or about $180 in 2004 money. The launch was super successful, selling over 200,000 consoles on the first day. Fast forward to February of 2005, and the North American launch date is announced to be March 24th, with a set price of $250 US. Quite a few commentators expressed concern over the fairly high price, with it being over $100 more expensive than its main rival, the Nintendo DS. Despite that, the launch was a great success, with it selling over 500,000 units in the first 2 days. Reportedly, it was still less than Sony expected, but still an unquestionable success. This left just one region in the dark. PAL regions were last to launch, even though Sony had originally planned to launch in North America and PAL at the same time. But due to high demand in both Japan and North America, the launch was delayed until September 1st. Upon release, the price was once again raised to 250 euros, or around $300 at the time. Sony defended the high price by stating that the sales tax was higher in the UK than the US, forcing them to up the price in order to maintain profit margins. Despite the higher price, the launch was still a massive success, with it selling all 185,000 units of its stock in the first 3 hours. It also beat the DS's previous sales record by more than double. In wider Europe, nearly 1 million units were sold in the first week. Pretty crazy numbers, considering this was Sony's first globally released handheld. As of its discontinuation in March of 2012, it had sold 76 million units worldwide. But the PSP didn't stay frozen in time. It went through a lot of phases, some good and some very grim. In 2007, Sony decided that the PSP needed some slimming down. Their answer to this was the PSP 2000, with its tagline, PSP Slim and Light, and it was in fact much lighter, weighing in at only 184 grams, down from the original 280 grams that the PSP 1000 weighed. They also slimmed it down by 5 centimeters. More controversially, they changed the serial port on the bottom of the PSP, making it incompatible with remote controls made for the PSP 1000. The main reason they did this was to allow for video output to an external monitor. Another thing they did was raise the D-pad due to complaints about its performance and bad feel. They also modified the buttons to make them more responsive. Among those small changes was an improved Wi-Fi module and microcontroller. To combat long loading times due to the UMD drive, they doubled the memory from 32 to 64 to allow more space to cache files from the drive. A major change was the newer and brighter LCD screen. Overall, it was a nice and needed refresh to an already good base console. A year later, Sony felt the itch to renew the PSP once again, with the PSP 3000. Although compared to the 2000, this was a pretty minor change, with them once again upgrading the screen, this time featuring a higher color range, higher contrast, and halved pixel response time, thanks to the new sub-pixel architecture. It also now featured an anti-glare coating, which was a very nice addition. It sold about 400,000 units upon its release in October of 2008. Technically, Sony made a version without a UMD drive called the PSP Go, but we're gonna pretend that never happened, for everyone's sake. Moving on to the next revision, the PSP Street was quite strange, with Sony removing Wi-Fi from it for some reason, as well as only featuring a singular speaker. Let me remind you, this was 2011, and here Sony is removing Wi-Fi from a handheld console. It also removed the physical brightness buttons, forcing you to go fuck around in the settings to change it. This also meant that you couldn't change it well in-game. It seems Sony was so out of ideas that they just started removing stuff instead of adding it. Oh, and it was still the same price as a PSP 3000. Basically, the PSP Go and PSP Street should be forgotten as a bad dream and nothing more. Thankfully, Sony stopped changing the PSP after that, but others were far from done innovating on the PSP's platform. Not long after the PSP was launched, hackers found a way to run unsigned code. Sony responded to this with the release of firmware version 1.51, which fixed multiple vulnerabilities hackers were utilizing, although updates weren't forced, so hackers just remained on version 1.5. This caused Sony to try and entice users to upgrade by adding an internet browser. Business Week dubbed this as the carrot and stick approach. In August of 2005, Sony released firmware version 2.0, which included the aforementioned internet browser, as well as multiple other improvements. Another interesting thing that happened in the community at the time was somebody made a Trojan that posed as a PSP downgrader, that once you used it to try and downgrade your PSP, it would brick your device by deleting crucial system files. As far as I can tell, downgrading the PSP was quite easy, allowing users to circumvent Sony's anti-jailbreak patches. Midway through 2006, a popular downgrader was released for firmware version 2.6, allowing users to downgrade back to the more exploitable version 1.5. This reportedly caused a buzz in the homebrew community at the time. In current year, jailbreaking the PSP has never been easier, with multiple custom firmwares out there for anyone to use. The major advantage with a jailbroken PSP is the ability to run games off the memory card instead of off the battery-draining UMD drive. The latest piece of homebrew I could find was last updated in 2017, likely because all the utilities you could possibly need have already been made, and because Sony hasn't updated the PSP in forever, they'll never break. And with all that said, on to my final thoughts. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry I was gone for so long, but I should get another video out pretty soon. Logically, I can make a video about the PS Vita next. Let me know if you'd like to see that. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Once again, don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. And if you have something to say, why not post a comment? And with all that said, have a great day.